You've probably wondered what it feels like to open your platform without that knot in your stomach, to take a loss and not spend the next hour replaying every decision, to follow your plan without fighting yourself every step of the way. You've seen traders who seem calm, almost detached, and you've asked yourself what they know that you don't. What do they have that you're missing? The answer isn't what you think. It's not better analysis. It's not a secret system. It's not even experience, necessarily. It's something quieter, something internal. And today, we're going inside that mind. Not to admire it, but to understand it. Because once you understand it, you can build it. Consistent traders aren't born. They're built, and they're built through a series of psychological shifts that most struggling traders never make, because they don't even know these shifts exist. They think consistency comes from finding the right edge, the right time frame, the right risk-reward ratio. And yes, those things matter, but they're not what separates the trader who lasts from the trader who burns out. What separates them is what happens between the ears. It's how they think about themselves, how they think about the market, how they relate to uncertainty, to loss, to success. It's a completely different operating system, and most traders are running outdated software, wondering why they keep crashing. So let's start with the most important distinction. Consistent traders do not think like you think they think. You imagine they've mastered their emotions, that they don't feel fear, that they're supremely confident, unshakable, always in control. But that's a fantasy. That's not what's happening inside. What's actually happening is far more interesting and far more accessible than you realize. The consistent trader feels everything you feel. The doubt before a trade, the anxiety during a drawdown, the temptation to interfere when a position moves against them, the pull to take profit early, the sting of a loss. All of it. The difference is not that they don't feel it. The difference is that they don't obey it. They've learned to separate sensation from action. They've learned that feelings are weather, not instructions. And that's the first major shift. Most traders are constantly asking, how do I stop feeling this way? The consistent trader has stopped asking that question. They've accepted that feelings are part of the landscape. The question they ask instead is, how do I act in alignment with my plan, regardless of how I feel right now? That question changes everything, because the moment you stop trying to eliminate discomfort and start learning to act through it, you stop being at the mercy of your emotional state. You stop needing the market to feel a certain way before you can execute. You stop needing confidence. You stop needing certainty. You just need a plan and the willingness to follow it. And that willingness is a skill. It's not a personality trait. It's not something you either have or you don't. It's something you build, one uncomfortable decision at a time. Now, let's go deeper. What does it actually mean to act in alignment with your plan? Because most traders think they have a plan. They have rules. They have setups. They have risk parameters. But when the moment comes, when they're live in the market with real money on the line, the plan evaporates. It becomes optional. It becomes something they'll follow if it feels right. And that's the issue. The consistent trader has made their plan non-negotiable, not because they're more disciplined in some moral sense, but because they've redefined what the plan actually is. For the struggling trader, the plan is a guide, a suggestion, a framework they'll use when conditions are favorable. But for the consistent trader, the plan is the entire game. Following the plan is success. Not following, it is failure. The outcome of the trade is irrelevant to this equation. A losing trade that followed the plan is a win. A profitable trade that violated the plan is a loss. This is not semantics. This is a fundamental rewiring of how you define success in trading. And until you make this shift, you will always be at war with yourself. You'll take profits early and feel smart when the market reverses. Reinforcing bad behavior, you'll break your rules and get lucky, teaching yourself that the rules don't really matter. You'll sabotage your own process, and the market will reward you just enough to keep you confused. The consistent trader has eliminated this confusion. They've collapsed the gap between what they say they'll do and what they actually do. And they've done it by making process the only metric that matters. They don't judge themselves by their P&L. At the end of the day, they judge themselves by whether they executed their plan. Did I take the trades my system identified? Did I manage them according to my rules? Did I exit when I said I would? Yes or no? That's the scorecard. The market decides whether those trades make money, but the trader decides whether they did their job. And when you separate those two things, something remarkable happens. You stop feeling responsible for things you can't control. You stop taking losses personally. You stop interpreting a red day as evidence that you're failing. You start seeing trading for what it is, a probabilistic process that you execute, not an outcome you control. But here's where it gets difficult. Making this shift requires you to let go of something that feels essential. It requires you to let go of needing to be right. And that's painful, because you didn't come to trading to follow a process. You came to win. You came to prove you could figure this out. You came to make money, yes, but also to validate something deeper, that you're smart enough, capable enough, different from all the people who fail at this. And every time you take a trade, there's a part of you that's not just risking money, you're risking that identity. You're asking the market to confirm that you belong here. The consistent trader has let go of that need, not because they don't care about being good, but because they've stopped asking the market to tell them whether they're good. They've internalized that trading is not a test of intelligence. It's not a test of worth. It's a test of process. And the only person grading that test is them. The market is just probabilistic noise. Sometimes it pays you. Sometimes it doesn't. But it's not evaluating you. It's not even seeing you. It's just doing what markets do. And once you deeply understand that, once you really feel it, the emotional charge of individual trades starts to dissolve. Think about what happens when you take a loss right now. If you're honest, it doesn't just feel like money leaving your account. It feels like failure, like proof that you screwed up, like evidence that maybe you're not cut out for this. And that feeling makes you do things. It makes you want to make it back immediately. It makes you question your system. It makes you hesitate on the next trade because what if you're wrong again? You enter this spiral where the loss isn't just a loss. It becomes a story about who you are. And that story is far more expensive than the money you lost. The consistent trader takes a loss and sees information. The trade didn't work. Okay? Was the setup valid? Yes. Did I manage it correctly? Yes. Then this is just variance. This is probability playing out. The system says, take this trade 100 times, and maybe 60 of them work. This was one of the 40. There's no story, there's no meaning. There's just data. And that emotional neutrality is not something they're faking. It's not a front. It's genuinely how they experience it. Because they've done the work of separating their identity from their outcomes, they know who they are outside of what the market does. And that knowing is unshakable. So, how do you build that? How do you go from someone who feels destroyed by losses to someone who processes them as information? You start by examining what losing actually means to you. Not what you think it means. What it really means in your body, in your thoughts, in the story you tell yourself afterward. For most traders, losing means, I was wrong. I made a mistake. I failed. I'm not good at this. Other people wouldn't have done that. I should have known better. And beneath all of those thoughts is a deeper fear. Maybe I'm not capable of this. Maybe I'm fooling myself. The consistent trader has confronted that fear. They've asked themselves, what if I'm not special? What if I don't have some innate gift? What if I'm just an ordinary person trying to execute a process in a probabilistic environment? And they've made peace with that. They've accepted that they don't need to be special. They just need to be consistent. They've accepted that they will be wrong a lot, and that being wrong is not a character flaw. It's a statistical reality. And once you accept that, once you stop needing to be right to feel okay about yourself, trading becomes so much simpler. You're not fighting your ego every time you take a trade. You're just executing. But let's talk about what happens when you win, because this is just as revealing. The struggling trader wins and feels validated. Finally, proof that they know what they're doing. Proof that they can do this. And that feeling is intoxicating. It's the feeling they've been chasing. So, they want more of it. They start looking for the next trade, not because their system says it's there, but because they want to feel that validation again. They increase risk because they're on a roll. They take marginal setups because they're in the zone. They stop following their plan because they don't need it right now. They've got the touch, they can feel the market, and then, inevitably, they give it all back. And they can't understand why. The consistent trader wins and feels nothing. Not because they're emotionless, but because a win is just a trade that worked. It's not proof of anything. It doesn't mean they've figured it out. It doesn't mean the next trade will work. It's just one outcome in a long series of outcomes. They don't celebrate. They don't feel relief. They just record the trade, check that they followed their process, and move on. And this might sound joyless to you. You might think, what's the point of winning if you don't get to feel good about it? But here's what you're missing. The consistent trader has found a different kind of satisfaction. They're not chasing the high of being right. They're experiencing the deep, quiet satisfaction of doing what they said they would do, of being in integrity with their plan, of building trust with themselves. And that satisfaction is sustainable. It doesn't disappear when the market turns. It doesn't require the next trade to validate it. It's always available because it comes from process, not outcome. This is the shift from external validation to internal validation. And it's one of the hardest transitions a trader can make, because external validation is immediate. The market pays you, you feel good. The market takes from you, you feel bad. It's simple, it's clear, but it's also a trap. Because you've given your emotional state to something you can't control. You're a passenger. The market is driving, and wherever it goes, your sense of self-worth goes with it. Internal validation requires you to build your own criteria for success. And that means you have to decide in advance what constitutes a good trading day. For the consistent trader, a good trading day is one where they executed their plan. That's it. They took the trades they were supposed to take. They didn't take the trades they weren't supposed to take. They managed their positions according to their rules. They stayed present. They didn't let emotions override their system. Win or lose, if they did those things, it was a successful day. And over time, that definition of success creates a completely different emotional experience of trading. You stop riding the roller coaster. You stop feeling euphoric or destroyed based on P&L. You start feeling steady, grounded, in control of the things you can actually control. Now, here's something the consistent trader understands that most traders don't. Trading is not about the trades. It's about the gaps between the trades. It's about what you do when you're not in the market. It's about how you prepare, how you review, how you think about your performance, how you talk to yourself when things aren't working. The struggling trader is only focused when they have a position on. The rest of the time, they're distracted, waiting for the next opportunity, refreshing their screen, looking for something to do. They experience trading as this frantic, reactive thing. They're always chasing, always behind dara-daratu. The consistent trader is the opposite. They're calm between trades because they trust their system to identify opportunities. They don't need to hunt, they don't need to force. They know that if they stay patient, the setups will come. And when they're not trading, they're doing the real work. They're reviewing their execution, not their outcomes. Their execution. Did I hesitate? Where did I feel uncomfortable? What was I thinking when I broke that rule? They're curious about their own patterns. They're studying themselves with the same intensity that struggling traders study charts, because they know that the chart is not the problem. The problem is how they respond to the chart. And this is where self-awareness becomes everything. The consistent trader has developed an ability to observe themselves in real time. They can feel the urge to revenge trade and name it. Oh, that's my ego, trying to restore order. They can feel the temptation to move a stop and recognize it. That's my fear of being stopped out. I don't want to admit this trade isn't working. They can feel the pull to take profit early and understand it. I'm prioritizing certainty over edge. I'm trying to lock in the feeling of being right. And because they can name these impulses, they're not controlled by them. They have a split second of space between the feeling and the action. And in that space, they can choose to follow their plan instead of their comfort. This is not willpower. This is not gritting your teeth and forcing yourself to do the right thing. This is awareness creating freedom. When you see the pattern, you're no longer inside it. You're observing it. An observation creates distance. Distance creates choice. And choice is where consistency lives. But building this level of self-awareness requires something most traders avoid. It requires you to sit with your failures, not to beat yourself up, not to spiral into but to genuinely look at what happened and why. The struggling trader loses and immediately looks away. They distract themselves. They blame the market. They move on to the next trade. Anything to avoid the discomfort of examining what they did. The consistent trader does the opposite. They lean into the discomfort. They pull up the chart. They review the trade. They ask themselves, what was I trying to accomplish here? Did I follow my plan? If not, what was I feeling? What was I afraid of? What was I chasing? And they answer honestly, not to punish themselves, but to learn. Because every deviation from the plan is valuable information about their internal state. It's a window into the subconscious patterns that are running the show. And over time, this practice builds something essential. It builds self-trust. Because every time you confront a mistake, examine it, and commit to doing better, you're proving to yourself that you're serious. You're showing yourself that you're not just here to make money. You're here to become the kind of person who can make money consistently. And that's a much deeper game. It's a game of character development, of building integrity, of becoming someone whose actions align with their intentions. And that version of you, that consistent version, is not someone who wins every trade. It's someone who can be trusted to execute the plan regardless of what the market does. And that trust, that internal trust, is the foundation everything else is built on. Let's talk about what happens when that foundation is missing. When you don't trust yourself, every trade becomes a test. Will I follow through this time? Will I hold my stop? Will I take profit too early again? You go into the trade already doubting yourself, already expecting to fail. And that doubt creates hesitation. It creates second guessing. It creates the exact behaviors you're trying to avoid. You become a self-fulfilling prophecy. You don't trust yourself, so you don't act decisively, so you get poor results, which confirms that you can't trust yourself. And the cycle continues. The consistent trader has broken this cycle by doing one thing over and over until it became automatic. They kept their word to themselves, even when it was uncomfortable, even when it cost them, even when breaking the rule would have been easier. They took the loss at their stop, even though it hurt. They let the winner run, even though they wanted to take profit. They stayed out when there was no setup, even though they were bored. And each time they did this, they made a deposit into their self-trust account. And over time, those deposits compounded. Now, when they make a plan, they know they'll follow it. Not because they're perfect, but because they have evidence. They have a track record with themselves. And that track record changes everything. You can build this too, but you have to start small. You can't go from breaking your rules every day to perfect execution overnight. You have to choose one thing, one rule, one commitment. and you have to keep it for a week, then 2 weeks, then a month. It doesn't matter what the rule is. It matters that you keep it. Maybe it's, I will not trade in the first 15 minutes. Maybe it's, I will take my stop loss without moving it. Maybe it's, I will not revenge trade after a loss. Whatever it is, make it small enough that you can keep it. And then keep it. Even when you don't want to, especially when you don't want to. Because that's where the growth is. That's where you prove to yourself that you can override your impulses. And once you've built that muscle with one rule, you can add another and another. And slowly, you become someone who does what they say they will do. You become consistent. You can build this mind, but it requires something that most traders aren't willing to give. It requires honesty. Brutal, uncomfortable honesty with yourself about why you do what you do, about what you're really afraid of, about what you're really chasing, about the ways you sabotage yourself. And it requires commitment. Commitment to a process that won't pay off immediately. Commitment to doing the boring, unglamorous work of following your rules even when it doesn't feel exciting. Commitment to becoming someone different than who you are now. The trader you are now got you here, but they won't get you where you want to go. You have to evolve. You have to become the person who can handle consistency, who can handle success, who can handle the responsibility of executing a plan day after day without the market holding your hand. And that evolution happens slowly. One choice at a time. One kept commitment at a time. One honest self-assessment at a time. So when you close this video and go back to your charts, ask yourself, what is one thing I can do differently today? Not 10 things. One thing. Maybe it's being honest about a trade that didn't follow your plan. Maybe it's keeping your stop even though you want to move it. Maybe it's walking away when there's no setup, even though you're bored. Whatever it is, do that one thing. And then do it again tomorrow. And the day after that, and slowly, without you even noticing, you'll start to change. You'll start to trust yourself more. You'll start to feel steadier. You'll start to act like the trader you want to become. And one day, maybe months from now, maybe longer, you'll realize something. You're not fighting yourself anymore. You're not at war with your emotions. You're not wondering if you can do this. You're just doing it. You're executing your plan. You're processing wins and losses with the same emotional temperature. You're building something real. And it won't feel dramatic. It won't feel like some breakthrough moment. It will just feel like clarity. Like finally understanding what this game actually is. And that understanding, that clarity, is what lives inside the mind of a consistent trader. It's been waiting for you this whole time. You just had to be willing to build it.